Okay. How many of you have ever been outside of California? Show of hands. Oh, okay. Better question. How many of you have ever been outside the United States? Still white. Very good. I want to talk about the importance of traveling. But I want to take a little different. I want to talk about the importance of traveling, specifically why everyone should travel, not just because you're young, but for various reasons. And you don't have to travel. I don't want to stress the fact you don't have to travel now. A lot of us have this idea that we're young, we need to travel, we got to see the world now. The fact is, probably not very likely. It's still kind of expensive. However, so I want to go into the do's and don'ts, why so many Americans either do travel or they don't travel, talk about the relative cost of traveling today compared to before, and lastly talk about how it just enriches your life. It really adds to you as a person. So let's go on to the do's or don'ts. So not very surprisingly, a lot of Americans don't really travel, or they stay in their states, or they go to maybe one or other states. They go to Vegas. That's as far as you can. Maybe San Francisco, because we've got to go see the Bay Area. But a lot of Americans don't travel for this. It's a real simple reason why I don't travel. It's expensive. It costs money. Recently, I've never been on a plane to literally this semester. I've never traveled before. I've never been north of San Francisco, south of San Diego. Never been anywhere. Flew to Seattle. I was like, okay, you know what? Might be pricey. $500. I was like, what the hell? I mean, so I've never traveled. So yeah, traveling is expensive. It is expensive, and it makes it even harder on us as college students. Like, you have if you're living at home and you have a job, even then you have bills to pay, or you don't. Like, you're not making $52,000 a year. Like, you're making what, $15,000 a year as a college student. So it's really difficult to sacrifice that kind of money. However, I want to stress the importance of that sacrifice if you can, or the importance of realizing that you should set a part in your life where you do want to travel. You should go somewhere in your life at some time, preferably out of the United States, because like there's no country in the world like the United States. However, the United States is like no other country. You go somewhere else, you're finally out of your comfort zone. Get out of the United States. So, according to ustravel.gov, in 2012, the median household income for domestic leisure travelers was $62,500. Business travelers' median income was $87,500. And this compares to the general U.S. income of just $52,000 in America. And so you can see how even the average adult American isn't really gonna, give up that money, because they don't even, we don't make a lot. And when you're spending, the average travel cost, travel outside the United States is at least $1,100. Like, it gets pricey real quick. And then that's just flying. Forget hotels, forget staying there for just a week every night. Like, it gets pricey real quick. And then, even more importantly, is the time. We don't have time. We live in a society where everything's quick, fast-paced. You're working 40 hours a week. You got 4 classes. It's like, where are you going to find 7 days of your year to just dedicate to spending all that money to going out traveling? It seems kind of difficult. However, despite all these don'ts, I'm sure a lot of you you always thought about, I want to go see Italy. I want to go see France, Japan, Korea, Mexico, Costa Rica. Even though you know you have these, you still want to. And that's because a lot of us understand the importance of getting out. A lot of us understand you want to experience new culture. You want to experience new things. You're tired of being in a time when it's Christmas and it doesn't snow. It just don't snow here. Not the same. I just came from Seattle, Leavenworth. It was snowing in November. I was shocked. So it was cold. So it is expensive. However, I want to urge you to, if you don't have that fiscal responsibility of yourself, to try to set aside money. Try to make a plan. We have Christmas break coming up. We have days off in January. You can try and maybe plan a trip. If not now, do it within a year, do it in a couple years, Imports now, if you can't afford it now, you should still plan for it later. It's definitely going to be worth it. Secondly, I want to move on to the relative costs to the past. Taryn was right in one thing. This is the age to travel. This is definitely the time to travel compared to the 21st century. There's never been an easier time to get around the world. According to theatlantic.com, back in the 60s, 70s, leading into the 80s, more than 80% of the country had never once been on a plane. And there was a simple reason. Flying was outrageously expensive. And the reason was because it was the law. Flying used to be run by the government. Like, they controlled the aviation. They still do checks now, but largely it's privatized. You get, Virgin America, Atlantic, Delta Airlines. Those are all private companies. It's not government run. They ain't charging you like $600 in taxes alone on top of your airfare. So it's definitely cheaper now. Now it's privatized. And they also touched how getting government has led to the remarkable decrease. And also, I want to stress a little side, since we're talking about economics, how important traveling is for us as a country. According to Health Fitness Revolution, which did an intensive study on the economics of traveling and the health aspects of traveling, each U.S. household would pay $1,000 more a year in taxes if not for the revenue brought in from traveling towards heavily the traveling we get from people that come to our country. Lastly, I want to touch on just the personal benefits, the health benefits, the psychological benefits. Let's start off with, since we're students. Health Fitness Revolution also about students who traveled abroad are nearly twice as likely as their homebound peers to complete a college degree and report earning higher incomes, out-earning their peers by at least 40%. So they pretty much did a study where they talked to college students, they took them from various colleges around the country, and they were like, did you travel? Where'd you go? And then they came back to them about 5 years later, and they were like, what's your job? What are you earning? They compared them to people who never traveled, who stayed in the state. And they were earning more money on average than people who never traveled. Let me get into why it's more, it's good for you as a person. I don't want to say soul, but it's good for you it develops you more. To just, when you go out and you see some of the world wonders, like beyond just America, when you see the Eiffel Tower and you stand next to it and you have to look straight up because it's stories high, or the Empire State Building, the Great Wall of China, it puts your life into perspective. You realize how small you are and how the things you fret over every day, money expenses, family issues, like, it makes you realize how they're all just temporary things. And then I think traveling really helps relieve yourself. It gives you that break away from our fast-paced society that we've all become so accustomed to. And it's very necessary. And lastly, I just want to touch, in conclusion, how if you're not, if you can't afford the expenses now, don't worry about it. If you can, please try your best. It's definitely worth it when you're young, because you're not married, you don't have kids, you don't have all these things dragging you down. But just because you can't afford it now, do plan for it 10, 30 years down the road, sometime in your life. See something. Don't be boring. Secondly, no using the excuse, oh, it's too expensive, because honestly, your grandparents, they couldn't afford this. It was ridiculous. Like, your parents can barely afford this. Like, it was kind of rushing into their age. It's definitely more available in the 21st century for anyone else. And lastly, do it for yourself. You'll gain so much more as a person. Like, you'll see things, you'll have stories to tell. Like, you won't regret going to Paris for 2 weeks. Like, you're never gonna be like, oh, I wish I never went. Oh, what a waste. Like, you saw Paris, you saw China, you did things with your life. You weren't gonna die with regrets. So, I hope now you all will consider, or at least take time to plan out some time in your life where you like to dedicate to just seeing the world. Thank
you. Doug, share with us your thoughts on the speech that you just heard. like the topic of traveling. I agree that everybody should travel. It's very important. I liked how he mentioned that, brought into a little bit personal where he just went on his first planned flight, which is a neat experience for people if they've never done it. I liked how he stated that it's cheaper now than it used to be, because a lot of times you hear people talk about how it's too expensive to travel, but it's a lot cheaper. Thought it was interesting that people that have actually gone to school abroad for a bit have a higher pay raise than people that just focus here. I never really knew that. That was pretty neat research to tell us, to give a more incentive for younger people to go travel. Also, the fact that he says you're never too old to travel, which I like that, and that's pretty much it.
All right. Thank you. I'll agree with most of what you said. I do think that it's a little tough being back to back with another speech about traveling. That was a little awkward. Not nearly as awkward though as that audience survey where both times you got like, oh, everybody's done that. Well, how about this one? Oh, everybody's done that one too. And it's like, this is why you want to have a better attention device planned, because sometimes they come up and you do that kind of thing and say, that's not what I was expecting, and it doesn't quite work out the way you wanted it to. You had a couple of extra pieces of information in the speech, similar to what I was suggesting Taryn might have, like about the advantages of traveling and, if there's a way that it could be measured economically. But you also had some of the same kinds of emotional issues that you talked about. I like the visualization that you create of standing, at the Eiffel Tower or the Great Wall of China and, seeing how small your problems are really in the scale of the world. I thought that was pretty effective in a way of, getting people to kind of emotionally connect with what you're talking about. All right, thank you.